Yeah, but how come you get Dad's Day? That's not Christian Family Sunday, too. And the point is that they all are Christian Family Sundays. They're all family Sundays. Do you know where Mother's Day came from? How many people here know why we have this holiday, where it comes from? In actual fact, in ancient cultures, in all cultures, there has been some way of celebrating the love of mothers. You can go to ancient Greece, pre-Christian times, you can find the concept of Mother's Day. In Europe, through the early years of the Church and the Roman, the Holy Roman Church of the which is before the denominational splits, early history, the early Church had a way of celebrating and holding up the love of mothers. But Mother's Day, as we know it, is now celebrated and observed in pretty much 117 countries of the world, comes from 19th century North America. Because of two women. There was a woman who lived in Grafton, West Virginia. And her name was Ann Jarvis. I have to get her name right. Just don't want to mix up the women here. And her mother was Anna Jarvis, Anna Reeves Jarvis. And Anna Reeves Jarvis, in the 1850s, organized something called the Mothers' Workday Clubs in her area. And Mothers' Workday Clubs were women who were centered in the home and the domestic arts, who would then move out into the community and care for the sick and care for the poor. They had an outreach of helping children with tuberculosis, and they did good works all through their society. They inspected milk so that families that were getting milk for their children got milk that was, before pasteurization and before the things that we do to it, was safe for children to drink. When the Civil War broke out, what was remarkable with this woman was that she called together all of the members of all of the clubs that had been organized in her area and asked them to pledge a pledge of friendship and goodwill that would not be the casualty of war. And so throughout the war, the women of these clubs nursed soldiers from both sides, and they saved many lives, and they made a point of never picking sides in the war. And they were respected by all sides for doing that. Anna Reeves Jarvis became a genuine peacemaker by organizing first her mother's work days, and then coming out of that war experience, what she called Mother's Friendship Days, to bring together families from the north and south that had been torn apart by the war, that they could be restored in faith and fellowship. So Ann Jarvis, her daughter, who was born in 1850, as a child, grew up with her mother doing this courageous work. So in 1907, 2 years after her mother died, she organized the first Mother's Day in Grafton, so that her mother's work for peace and justice and mission in this world would be recognized and not forgotten. And she lobbied in her area, in her state, and then throughout the U.S., for that to become a national holiday. And it was eventually proclaimed as on the 2nd of May. It was eventually, first it was the 2nd day of May was to be Mother's Day. Eventually became this day, what is this, the 2nd Sunday of May. At the same time that was happening, another woman by the name of Julia Ward Howe, and some of you would know her name if you read the bottom lines of hymns and the authors. She's the woman who wrote the Battle Hymn of the Republic. Julia Ward Howe was a militant abolitionist, and her hymn, Battle Hymn of the Republic, was a great hymn that was sung throughout that time of strife in the States when the Civil War was on, similar time to Anna Jarvis doing her work. But she organized what was called Mother's Peace Days coming out of that war, which celebrated annually on June 2nd. And her conviction was that though the world may be divided by war and conflict, the experience of childbirth would bind the mothers of the world together into one family that could make a difference. So the central concern of those who established Mother's Day was not just to celebrate motherhood, but it was the belief that civil liberties, international peace, overcoming poverty, and ministry to the sick and poor could be held up in this world in some way. From that beginning to this day, it is not simply enough to remember mothers, but to express the deepest form of love possible in this world. Their simple example was that a mother's love overcomes the hardships of war and violence and poverty. And the commandment of Jesus is that if you love one another as I have loved you. Jesus gave us that commandment. He said, if you love one another as I have loved you. And these women held up their mothers as people who were perfect examples of of women who were willing to live the love of Jesus Christ. And to share in this world a sense of justice, of well-being, of wholeness, and of hope. It's a powerful commandment. Because it's one about forgiveness. It's one about sharing and caring. It's one about making this world, beautiful as it is, as God has created it, more beautiful in the human landscape. It's about reminding us that we can break. We do break. We're human beings. We break. But God's love, revealed in Jesus Christ, restores us all. What are we called to do? We're called not to be male and female in all of this. We're called to be mothers. Mothers in the generic sense of people who are willing to express the full, abundant love of God in every way in our life. And when we fail, to realize that the love of God will restore us again, and again, and again, and again. One of the most tragic and beautiful stories I know about a mother's love was a woman who lived in a community near me in Quebec. At the age of 75, she went to jail. She went to jail because she had embezzled all of the funds of the local United Church, of a local cemetery council of which she was the treasurer, and another community organization, an aid organization. Her husband didn't know she was embezzling all the money. They didn't have any of the money to live on. But she had a ne'er-do-well son who just seemed to have one failed business venture after another. And Mom bailed him out all the time. Mom continued to bail him out until she got caught. And at 75, was arrested. Now that's a sad story. That is a sad story of love gone wrong, but it still shows us that there is a power of love in this world that you can actually care for someone or something that much. Now, they say, don't judge the sinner, just judge the sin. This woman had the right idea of how to give unconditional, unfailing love to someone. She also hadn't learned that sometimes to give unconditional and unfailing love to someone is to say, no, I can't do that anymore, because if I really love you, I won't give you anything else. So what Jesus has told us is to love one another as I have loved you. Not to be a patsy. Yes, Jesus went to the cross for us. Yes, Jesus died for us. But it was a corrective action in our lives. It's something that needed to happen so that we would stand up and take notice. The other commandment of Jesus that stands alongside of this is that you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul. And you shall love yourself as much as you love one another. So you can't give up your being for someone else, but from your being you can give all of yourself to share and care for someone else. How does that work? loving God and being loved by God. It's also about how God shows that continued love through the power and presence of the Holy Spirit. All we are called to do is live that love and to allow ourselves to be mirrors of the love for those around us. Can't give everything away if you've got nothing left to give. Why? Because love builds